Hey guys, sorry for not being around. So we're back today with another video. So in the last video, we created a Active Directory server and all that stuff. So I'm just going to show you in this video to add a secondary domain controller. So basically, the best practices for Windows Server with regards to Active Directory is to have a secondary domain controller as a backup. So as you can see here, I'm on my ThinkPad, okay, my W510, and I have Windows Server on here, of course, and I'm actually, to save time, I've already connected my ThinkPad to my domain. Now, my last server got sold, so I created a new server just for this video. So we're just gonna go and open up our remote desktop here, and you can see in the remote desktop here, this is a new server. Okay, so I just made a new server for this video purpose, and this server, as you can see, it has some things installed already. I've installed Hyper-V and Active Directory and so on, just to show you that I've connected to my domain. Okay, it has a static IP, right? And we have our Hyper-V server here, which is a brand new machine that I just made today, and this machine I've just called domain controller 1. Now the specs for this machine are quite simple. I've enabled dynamic memory, and you can see here that for now I gave it 2 processors, and there's 2 switches. For the switches, I've made 2 switches. I've got one external switch, okay, which is using the NIC teaming. Alright, so I have NIC teaming enabled on this server, and I can do another video on that a little bit later on, just to save time and stay on track here. So we've got NIC teaming, and then I also have made an internal switch for communication between the main server and the virtual machine. So the virtual machine here, we'll go ahead and open the window for that. So this virtual machine, it's brand new. I just made it today, and it's all up to date, and as you can see, it's named domain controller 1, and we've got a static IP here, okay, and it is domain joined. Now for this server, the file topology, I created actually a file space called virtual machines, and then I have my virtual machines inside here. Okay, so that's where the disk is, and as you can see, this machine here, it's bare, doesn't have anything installed. It's a brand new machine, and I've got other videos that shows how to set all that stuff up. So basically, since we already have it joined to the domain, and it's quite simple, you would just, if you go change here, you just enter your domain, right, and you can join it, and you just have to make sure that in your network in properties that you add the DNS servers properly. So the first DNS server obviously is going to be the main machine, right? My main Hyper-V host, which is the 100. And as you can see here, I've got the 100 as a DNS server listed at the top. Okay. And as you can see, we do have internet connectivity on this machine. Okay, so if we just check Google here, you can see that we do in fact actually have internet connectivity. Alright, so it's quite simple. The first process, and so like I said, our goal is to add, we've got our first server here, which is our host, right, and that's our Active Directory server and our domain controller. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the secondary server, and it's going to be a domain controller. So it's really easy. Once you get your server all set up and up to date and everything, and you're ready to go, you just hit manage, add roles and features, and hit next, next. Make sure that your server is highlighted, hit next, and you're gonna select Active Directory Domain Services. And it's gonna add some additional features. Okay, you just go ahead and hit next, add features. And we're gonna stick with the defaults. We're not gonna add anything else for now. So next, 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 and install. So it's gonna go through that install process. All right. And once that finishes, we are going to additionally make this our secondary domain controller. Okay, it's real easy. Now this is the best practices with regards to Microsoft. So if you have one domain controller, now obviously even though this is on the same machine and it's a virtual machine for the purposes of this video, you can have additional servers and the process is the same. So they don't have to be on the same box. They don't have to be even on the same bare metal machine. You can do them independently. For me, I have a small office, so I usually only have the one server. If I did have two independent bare metal servers, I would have one on one and one on the other. And that's it. So you can see it's installed here, and just right here it says promote this server to a domain controller. You're going to go ahead and hit that, and you're going to add a domain controller to an existing domain. Now we are already in the domain, but we are going to change this here. We're going to change it to the administrator account. Okay, and you go ahead and enter your administrator password. Okay, right? Okay, so it has to be the domain administrator, and you have to be a part of that group. You go ahead and hit next, and it's going to ask you for, I didn't rename my site for now. It's going to ask you for your password that you used in the previous video setting up your Active Directory to begin with. Now I believe I remember my password. If not, oh, maybe I didn't remember my password. Let's see, so many passwords. Let's try that. Nope. Un momento. I guess I should have written that down. There we go. All right. So I did remember my password, thankfully. Now we're just going to hit next. And where it says here where you're going to replicate from, we're going to replicate from the main domain controller. Okay? Hit next. Next. And you can review here some of the scripts. Hit next. And it's going to go through and check, and all the prerequisites, obviously all the checks have passed. Okay, there's a few warnings there, and you can read up on those warnings if you like. They're more of a just letting you know some things. Install. It's going to go ahead now, and it's going to install the Active Directory domain services and enable this server as a secondary domain controller. Now I've called it domain controller 1 because my host server is not named domain controller, but at least I know that this is the domain controller, the first one. And you could name it whatever you want. Doesn't really matter as long as you know what's what. I usually name my servers you know what they are. So Now, when this is finished, I believe the server will reboot. So we'll just wait for that for a minute, and then we will carry on. So it's just going to configure everything, and then it'll reboot. Usually only takes a few minutes. Now I'm on Wi-Fi here, so hopefully I don't have any issue with the service or anything like that, so everything should be fine. Okay, so we'll just wait for this to complete. It takes a little bit of time, you know, and where it's going to replicate from, it's going to replicate from this server here, from our main host server, and we'll go over that in a second once this is finished. The longest part of this process is probably waiting for it to install, and once it installs, then it'll reboot on us. So now I really like the Active Directory, and this process, normally I go through this when I set up a server, because it's just nice to have everything, you know, all together, and knowing what you got in each server. You know, you can add servers based on the location, which is my network, and you could see that my domain controller is in the list now, and so is my ThinkPad. And the great thing about it is you can control your other servers in your network through Active Directory with just the one, you know, server manager interface. So I mean, you can be logged in on any of the servers as the administrator, and actively interact with the server and do different things, whether it's install roles or perform maintenance and so on and so forth. So let's just see what's taking this so long. Oh yeah, so this server here, when I made it today, it only has 2 CPUs, and I'm actually going to change that after, because and the memory, it's quite low. I did not give it a lot of memory because it's not really going to need it. And once this is finished, we will go through a few additional configuration options, because your domain controller must be running for it to function, obviously. So essentially what it is that if this main our host server here, if our Active Directory goes down, right, for this computer, or sorry, for this server rather, if it goes down and it cannot replicate from this one or get the information from this one, you can pull it from this one. And basically it's you know, the DNS system, right? So when you're checking your DNS here, right, okay, you can see that we have our servers listed here in our DNS manager, okay, with the IPs that they have currently. And we can also check in the Active Directory users and computers here. You will see that we have computers. We have my ThinkPad is listed under the computers because it's not a domain controller, and then under domain controllers you will see we have our 2 domain controllers. So we have our host, and we also have domain controller 1. Okay, so there's lots of things you can do with Active Directory, domain services, and so on. So let's see how this is doing now. So it says we're about to be signed out, so it's going to sign us out now automatically, and it's going to reboot, right? And once it reboots, we will just go ahead and hit close and let it do its thing. It's going to restart. It's going to reconfigure itself. Okay. Now, once it reboots, it's going to request some additional information from the host server. Okay. So it will take a little bit of time to reboot, so just be patient. You know, this could happen for 2 minutes or it could be 20 minutes. It just depends on how fast the server computes the information to the new domain controller. Okay, so once that's complete there, we can log in as our administrator. All right, and now you can see we have a different account here now. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Before we were just the machine administrator. Now we are logging in as the domain, the Active Directory administrator. All right. So I'll just give this a second to boot up. Now once this is done, there isn't really anything else you need to do other than we're just going to quickly confirm that the servers are replicating to each other. So for example, when you make a change in your DNS, for example adding a record or so on and so forth, it will replicate to both servers at the same time. Okay, so whatever information is written to the one, it'll go to the other. In regards to, let's say if you're web hosting or something like that. So there's a lot of information online about Active Directory and domain services and that kind of thing. And I didn't fix any of this stuff yet, so another delayed start, but I like to see the green. So you can see here now we have DNS installed in Active Directory. Okay. All right. So let's check now and see. So if we go in here to our sites and services, we can check and see if we are replicating to our servers. So okay, so there's nothing there yet. We just have to wait. It's going to take some time for it to replicate. Okay. Okay, so there's nothing there yet. We just have to give it a few minutes. And we can actually go in here and just take a look here. In our host machine. Now it takes a little bit of time for things to refresh, right? So we just gotta wait. You just have to wait for it to replicate. So let me check the DNS here. And we want to make sure that our that's the problem. We have to add our, we want to remove this one. We have to add our main DNS server there. Which server am I on here? Let me minimize this for a second to make sure I'm not changing the wrong one. Let me just double check that. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's move this one up. Okay. Go back here. Let me just check the. Dun, dun, dun. Let me just check our parameters here. Make sure that we are okay. Now we also want to add our own there. Let's see, we want to take away this one. We got okay. All right. Like I say, it takes a little bit of time. There we go. For things to replicate. Okay, you can see that it hasn't replicated yet to the other one. And this is what we're looking for, is these records here. Okay. Basically, it's just going to give us. We want to just make sure that they're replicating to each other. Let's minimize this for a second. Let's go into this one. Now normally, let's see what we got here. There we go. You can see they're both replicating, right? So it's replicating from the Rytec Lab server, which is the host, to the domain controller 1, and then as well as from the domain controller 1 to our host server. Okay, so basically we can actually rename this here. So we're gonna call this, what's our, so we're on RyLab, so we're just gonna rename this. And this is really handy if you have, let's see, here we go, we're gonna refresh. If you have multiple clusters or different servers and different locations and so on and so forth. So for example, if you had Toronto and Halifax and Montreal and whatever, Vancouver, you can rename different sites and different subnets and different subsites and so on and so forth. Okay, let's just check this one again. We're just going to refresh everything. Okay, and you can see here that it's already changed on this machine as well. So it's changed from default first site name to what we just changed it to, which was the RyLab. Okay, so you can see that our changes are replicating across the two machines. All right, so essentially so now if we want to go in and do like we can actually go in here. If we go into our DNS here, okay, let's go in and make a reverse set up a new zone for reverse lookup here. Okay, so we could put our reverse okay, so we go ahead and make a record here and reverse our DNS record here. Okay, now if we go back and check, it should have already replicated to this server as well. Let's see, so let's just do a refresh here. It takes a little bit of time. Forward lookup zones. Okay. Now, normally what I do is, you can see we have all our DNS records here, right? All the same records, okay? Now, I'm just going to shut this one down. And I'm going to change some of these settings here. Now, since my server, it's a small server, and the specs, it doesn't have a lot of memory. It only has 16 gigabytes at the moment, because it's actually a micro server. It only has an i7 6700K. It is overclocked and water cooled, of course, as usual. It's just a small nano server. It's a very small water cooled server with 2 NICs, and the memory at the moment is low. I may upgrade the memory later when memory prices come down. Anyhow, that's off now. We're gonna change some of these settings here. So since I'm just gonna change the memory back down to 1024, and I'm only gonna give it 1 CPU, okay? And I'm also gonna remove this DVD because we no longer need that, and that's it. So let's see if everything is okay. Let's go ahead and restart that now. Now you can set it up so that when the automatic start action here, so you can set it to always start this virtual machine automatically, and you can set a delay, so we can say, you know, 120 seconds, right? 2 minutes or so. Okay, so if for whatever reason, if there's a power outage or something like that, and you don't have to go in and set up this domain controller all over again by coming into the Hyper-V manager and all that sort of stuff. So if this main host here, if it shuts down, you only have to reboot this one, and once this machine is booted up, it'll automatically start this domain controller. Okay, and you can see that everything is copacetic, and we don't need a lot of power on that machine, like I say, because we're only using it as a domain controller. Okay, so we don't need you know, a lot of power. We only need you know, 1 CPU, okay, and we only need a limited amount of memory. All right, because it's not going to do anything other than replicate the records and stuff like that, okay, and provide the DNS services to our network. All right, now I do it that way because I give it more power in the beginning, because when you're setting up the machine and all that stuff, and you're configuring everything and installing everything, it's just nice to have a little bit more power available, right? And you can see if we open our sites and services here that everything is good. Okay. All right. Everything is replicating as it's supposed to. Okay. And let me just see. Let's just go in here to all servers and add that server now. Okay. So we could just check our directory here, and we could just go ahead and add that server. All right. And you can see here it is. All right. We could do different things with this machine because it's a part of our environment, you know. Okay, so there's different things we can do, you know, adding roles and whatever directly, right? Okay, so you can see they're both here. Alright, this is the great thing about, and you can see here's the DNS record that we added before. It's already replicated on that machine there. Okay, we can go to our local server here, our host, and you can see that our record is there. Okay, you can see both of our machines there now. And that's the great thing about Active Directory. It just makes things so much easier. Alright. And that's about it. So we have, and you can see we're not even using any of the CPU. This is running. Okay. We can check the state here, right? Memory. It's got a little bit more memory demand than what we allocated at the moment. It could be just checking some extra records or whatever. But it's healthy, it's running, and okay, everything is good there. So we have successfully added our secondary domain controller, okay, to our Active Directory. Now, so we have our first Active Directory and domain controller, our host, and we've added our second server and domain controller. Now that's it. So I hope this video helped you guys out, and if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the like button as always, and if you have any ideas for new videos, let me know. I'll try to get a few more up as soon as possible. I've been a little bit busy lately with my training and stuff like that, so trying to get in shape and so on and so forth. Yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time, guys.